Hello, in this video, I'm going to talk about simple carbohydrates and how they affect blood glucose. So first, what is a carbohydrate? So it's an organic compound, just meaning that it contains carbon. It's composed of one or more saccharide. So a saccharide is just a fancy name for a sugar molecule. So a simple carbohydrate is one or two saccharides, and a complex carbohydrate is three or more. And I'll discuss complex carbohydrates in the next video. Carbohydrates are produced by plants through photosynthesis. So ultimately, all of the energy that is passed through our entire food chain starts with the light energy from the sun. And then plants, through photosynthesis, transform that light energy into food energy. So in plants, that's carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are the source of food for plants and for any animals that eat those plants. And then carbohydrates, as I mentioned, can be simple or complex. So starting with monosaccharides. So mono meaning one. So a monosaccharide is just a single sugar molecule, a single saccharide. So those include glucose, fructose, and galactose. So glucose, when we consume glucose just as a monosaccharide, so individual molecules of glucose, we can just absorb those readily. Fructose and galactose, we absorb, and then they go to the liver, where the liver converts fructose and galactose into glucose. So the destiny of glucose, fructose, and galactose is all to just become glucose. So that glucose goes into circulation in your blood, and that's what blood glucose is. That's the amount of glucose that is traveling in your blood. Disaccharides are two saccharides, so two joined sugar molecules. So we have sucrose, lactose, and maltose are the disaccharides. So sucrose is made up of glucose and a fructose bonded together. Lactose is a glucose and a galactose bonded together, and maltose are two glucose molecules bonded together. So when we eat disaccharides, all it takes to digest these is we just have to break the one bond that is connecting the two saccharides. So we break the one bond, and now we just have glucose, fructose, and galactose that are absorbed, and everything is transformed ultimately into glucose. Okay, so simple carbohydrates have a very quick effect on our blood glucose because it requires so little digestion. There's so little we have to do if anything, monosaccharides, we don't really have to do anything. We just absorb them. And disaccharides, we only have to break one bond, and then we can just absorb them. So that means that we get a very fast, immediate rush of glucose in the blood. So if we look at our little chart here, the red line is showing simple carbohydrates and the blue line is showing complex. So even if, let's say we have a simple carb and a complex carb, and they're made up of exactly the same amount of glucose, the simple carbs are going to have this big spike effect on the blood glucose because we're able to absorb all of that glucose all at once. And so we get a big increase in blood glucose and then a big crash in our glucose as the insulin copes with that big rush. And a complex carbohydrate, even with the equivalent amount of glucose, a complex carb is made up of many glucose molecules that are all bonded together. And so we have to break them off one by one. So it's more like a slow release carbohydrate. So it could be an equivalent amount of glucose, but it's a slow release of that glucose into the bloodstream. So we get a more gradual rise and a more gradual decline. Okay, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.